Hello there, this is Pilgrim. Welcome to another episode of Day Trips. This time we will be visiting the French city of Mulhouse. As you can see, we are still in close vicinity to Basel. Mulhouse happens to be just 30 kilometers northwest of it. Let's zoom in a little bit more. Here we go. Mulhouse is now directly in the center of the map, with Basel being down to the right. It's fairly easy to identify because of the river Rhine flowing through it. But back to Mulhouse. The city has about 100,000 inhabitants. If you include the entire urban area, the number goes up to 200,000, which makes it the second largest city in Alsace, second only to Strasbourg. You can easily tell, just by looking at the map, that it is of considerable size. Let's get a little bit closer. As you can see, the old town is fairly easy to identify. It's roughly in the middle of the picture, just above the railroad. Its organic nature providing a sharp contrast to the newer parts of the city, which are very rectangular. It's a good example of urban planning in the early industrial age, while the old town, on the other hand, represents the older medieval layout. Before we enter the city, I've decided to take a look at it from the outside, like I usually prefer to do. Therefore, our point of entry will be the Rebberg, which is the hill to the south. It used to be the town's vineyard, but is covered by grand houses today. Apparently this is where some of the more wealthy citizens reside. So we will fit right in. Of course I did not just pick any random spot to start. In addition to the height of the hill, there's also this neat observation tower. Comes in quite handy. Alright, let's get on top of that thing. Easier said than done though. Look at those stairs, they're totally iced up. Yeah, this was in January 2024, and it was still pretty cold. But I made it on top somehow. It's true, Mulhouse is not necessarily a very impressive city. There's hardly anything in the way of skyline. But I can still show you something on this picture. For one, the mountains you can see in the distance are the French Vosges mountains. We will get a lot closer to them in the next episode. As for Mulhouse itself, the most impressive building, this one, is the so-called Tour de l'Europe, which means Europe Tower. It is 100 meters high, making it, believe it or not, the highest skyscraper in Alsace. Here's a close-up of the tower. As you can see, they designed it with 3 sides, representing the 3 countries meeting in this area. But we are not here for the skyscraper. We are here for these. My apologies for the bad quality. It was the only camera available to me at the time. But don't worry, we will be much closer shortly. So let's get moving. In order to reach the old town, we first have to cross the railroad and a small canal directly after. Here's a picture of the canal. It may seem small and insignificant to you, but it's actually quite important. Now, why is that? Well, it's part of the Rhone-Rhine Canal. Just as the name suggests, it connects the Rhone to the Rhine, and therefore the Mediterranean to the North Sea, making it very important for transportation and trade. As you would expect, the industrial development of Mulhouse benefited a great deal from this. But even before the canal was built, Mulhouse was well known for its textile industry. The cotton that was used here was actually imported from Louisiana, which used to be a French colony. However, later on, machinery industry and chemical industry also became very important. But enough with that. Let's move on to our first site, Église Saint-Étienne. But before you get carried away too much, this is a neo-gothic church, not a medieval one. Therefore, it's fairly recent, 19th century. This is the backside, of course, so we need to get around first. Here we are. This is much better. As you can probably tell, it's not particularly large. But size is not everything. Check out the small tympanum over the portal. It shows a scene from Judgment Day, a very common motive among Catholic churches. They really like to remind sinners what expects them. Can you see the demons carrying those people away down to the right? Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Just like the exterior suggested, the interior too is very traditional in layout, but it is done very nicely. One of the advantages of neo-Gothic churches is that they are usually pure in style, which is almost never the case with medieval ones. Look at the entrance area, for example. It's all Gothic. From the stained glass window above the door, to the platform the pipe organ is standing on, as well as the casing of the pipe organ itself. It's a very neat arrangement, to say the least. How do you like it? Let me know in the comments. As you can see, the pulpit is also Gothic in style, whereas in medieval Gothic churches the pulpit is very often Baroque. Another advantage of the neo-Gothic style is, well, that it's new, at least by comparison. Therefore, they are usually in a better condition. Remember when I told you that statues used to be painted in the Middle Ages? Well, in neo-Gothic churches you don't need to guess or look for traces of paint. The paint is usually just there, because they're so much younger. This is the main altar, and just to the left of it, the baptismal font. Naturally also Gothic in style. Well, at least the cover is. Sadly, it has already been damaged, as some of the fine points are missing. Now, I have a challenge for you. Tell me what's wrong with this picture. Any idea? Here's a hint. Look at the text. Yes, that's right, it's in German. And no, this is not a picture that made it in by mistake. We are still in France, in the very same church. This is just what you can expect in Alsace, since it used to be German for a while. As a matter of fact, historically speaking, it was just very recently that this region joined France. But more on that later. Here's another picture of the main altar and the choir. There's also a relic close by. It's from Saint John Paul II. The older ones among you might remember him, since he used to be on television a lot. Of course, back then he wasn't a saint, but Pope John Paul II instead. If you happen to be interested in relics, I will be giving a lecture at Comic-Con Dornbirn about this topic. It's on February the 14th. Yeah, St. Valentine's Day. At the point of release of this video, it should still be a couple of days away. Here's another altar from one of the side chapels, displaying some lovely detail. But what I discovered next was even better. I'm talking about this door, or, to be more precise, the fact that it was not locked. And you all know what that means. Yes, exactly. Also, if you need any more indications that this is indeed a neo-Gothic church, this staircase serves to illustrate the point. I mean, look at how wide it is. Almost as if it was made with human beings in mind. That never happens in medieval churches. We are now at the level of the gallery, inside the northern transept. At this elevation you get a much better impression of the proportions of the church, since your view is far less distorted by perspective. And yes, the gallery goes all the way around. So did I. Here's a close-up of the pipe organ. And also one of those magnificent paintings up here, which you were unable to see from below. As you can probably tell, I'm having a lot of fun right now. I hope you do too. As far as stained glass windows are concerned, this church has quite a few. However, there's nothing really particularly spectacular in this regard. I still wanted to show you at least one close-up, so I decided for this trio here. I mean, what's not to like about this? To the left we have a saint holding a flail and a skull, to the right we have a saint holding a sword and a scale, and in the middle, Jesus. And, from the looks of it, his blood flows down into cups, which other saints pour on people burning in hellfire. Magnificent. But now it's time for us to move on. Let's see what else we can find. As it turns out, our next object of interest is just a short walk away from the church. Right up here. This nice pink building happens to be City Hall. We are looking at one of its short ends at the moment, since we approach from the side. This is what the front looks like. As you can see, the Christmas lights are still on there. Apparently they haven't gotten around to remove them yet. We are on the town square now, by the way. It's a pretty nice place, with some of the houses being painted in a similar style to City Hall. Speaking of which, let's enter and look at the inside. They turned this into a museum, by the way, but I can't tell you how much it costs to enter, because on the day of my visit it happened to be free, but I don't think this is usually the case. Be it as it may, one of the first rooms is actually quite nice, as well as informative too. I guess now the time has come for me to tell you a little bit about the history of Mulhouse. As far as I know, Mulhouse was founded in the Middle Ages. It derives its name from a mill that was standing in this place, hence Mulhouse, with the German name being Mulhausen. As a matter of fact, the coat of arms of Mulhouse, which you can see in the center of the painting in the background, displays a mill wheel to this very day. Later on, Mulhouse became a free imperial city, which means it was associated with the Holy Roman Empire. And after that, it was in league with Switzerland. If you look at the coat of arms in the background, you'll notice that they're all Swiss. This being the somewhat younger history of Mulhouse. However, Mulhouse also was its own independent republic. The writing is, quite literally, on the wall. As a matter of fact, Mulhouse only joined the French Republic in 1798, so fairly recently by historical standards. The coin you see here has been minted in order to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Union. I got this picture from Wikipedia. I'm not sure if this coin is in the museum as well. If it is, I've overlooked it, I'm afraid. Coming back to my picture collection, I wish I could tell you something about this family tree. Unfortunately I can't, I just found it fascinating. That's why I took the picture. Of course there are also some weapons, armor, crossbows, muskets and coins, some of which bear the double-headed eagle of the Holy Roman Empire. This executioner's blade I found particularly interesting, even more so since it comes with a book of court rules below. The funny part about this is that while I can't read the French explanation, I can read the actual book because it's in German. Despite the fact Mulhouse was founded only in the Middle Ages, people have lived here for far longer, and there's actually proof of that in the museum, as can be seen here. These two skeletons are from the Iron Age, roughly 650 to 550 BC. There are also some ceramics and tools from the Young Stone Age. As we have already seen at the Isteiner Klotz, most of Europe has been settled since that time. Last but not least, the museum also has a room dedicated to Alfred Dreyfus, who was born in Mulhouse. If the name rings a bell with you, it's probably because you heard about the Dreyfus affair in your history class. It was a political scandal that divided the Third French Republic from 1894 until its resolution in 1906. It had widespread political and social consequences, as well as an anti-Semitical component, since Dreyfus happened to be of Jewish descent. Therefore, it remains one of the most notable examples of a miscarriage of justice as well as anti-Semitism. But now it's time to leave the museum behind and move on to our next location, which happens to be just across the plaza. There it is, TempleSaint-Étienne de Mulhouse. Just like the church we visited prior, this also happens to be a neo-Gothic one, with a notable difference that this one isn't Catholic but Protestant instead, which is rather unusual for France, which, historically, happens to be almost exclusively Catholic. It's one of the peculiarities of Alsace, which, as I already pointed out, only became part of France relatively recently, historically speaking. This church is also the main reason for my visit today, since I wanted to see it from up close, especially the tower, since it bears a stark similarity to the main tower of the Cathedral of Freiburg im Breisgau. Apparently this is no coincidence, for from what I've heard, this church was indeed inspired by the Cathedral of Freiburg im Breisgau. It's quite elegant and at a steeper angle still, making it quite a daring construction. Being 97 meters high, it's almost as high as the skyscraper I showed you initially, but much more delicate. Let me bring up the coin again I showed you earlier. As you can see, the city hall is displayed on the right. On the left hand side, on the other hand, a church can be seen. However, it is not the one we are looking at currently. I assume we are looking at the predecessor build here, which, besides the tower having a Baroque roof, appears to be Gothic. Apparently it was still around until 1900 at the very least, until it got replaced by a new build. The new building being quite unconventional for a church, since it has no transept, therefore being shaped like a short rectangle. Let's take a look inside. As we approach the main portal, once again the writing above it is German. Entering the building it appears even more squarish, for not only is there no transept, there's also no choir, with the base of the main tower taking up the back part of the interior, making it look even shorter still. Also, there's no main or side aisle, making this a single large room, surrounded by low galleries on three sides, making it feel more like a theater or a city hall, rather than a church. I do rather like the large stained glass windows though. They're much larger than the one in the Catholic church we saw, and also come with tracery. Unfortunately, there's no way to climb the tower, At least not for a regular visitor such as myself. So we'll keep this visit brief and move on. The third and final church I wanted to visit was well outside the old town. The position already suggesting that this is not a medieval building. And it really isn't. What you're looking at here is neo-baroque. Unfortunately, this one was closed, so all I could do was circle it before heading back. But don't worry, we are not done yet. Let's see what else we can find. 2 more churches aside, which also happen to be closed, I came across this monument. It's a reminder that Mulhouse was liberated from German occupation on 21st of November 1944 during the end phase of the Second World War. Now, this is something we will get to see a lot as we continue our exploration of France, so we better get used to it. I also found this tower, which I believe is a relic of the medieval fortification of the city. It does look like a shield tower, only that the side pointing inwards appears to have been closed later on. If you take a closer look at the base, you can clearly see that there used to be a gate which has been sealed shut. However, I have to point out that I couldn't find any kind of sign confirming this, so this is just me speculating. It does fit the profile though. I also came across this neat chapel. Judging by its looks alone, I would guess that this is probably the oldest building we've come across so far. However, once again, I'm unfortunately unable to confirm this. Sadly, I wasn't even able to enter. I suspect they either only open this up on special occasions or for distinguished visitors, which I'm not. It's a shame though, for I would have really liked to take a look inside this one. Oh well, it can't be helped. Almost back to the town square, I came across this restaurant with the most particular sign, and I don't want you to miss out on it. Entirely unrelated, except by proximity, the town synagogue also happens to be in the area. It's heavily secured, with a lot of surveillance equipment. Since I've never been inside a synagogue, I'm kind of curious, but I'm pretty sure I'm also not getting inside this one. Despite that, there is one last thing I can show you, which happens to be a remaining part of the city wall, as seen from inside town. Let's move around to take a look at the other side as well. Here we are. There's even a picture on there, featuring, once again, German writing. Let me translate for you. The precept Martin Malterer attempts to climb the city wall. Ulrich von Dornbach, mayor of Mulhouse, saved the city from the enemy in 1385 AD. I'm not familiar with the coat of arms up to the right. I suspect it's the one of the attacker, while the one directly below the horse, obviously, is the one of Mulhouse. The one down to the left, on the other hand, is the one of the Holy Roman Empire, confirming what I told you earlier. This concludes our visit to Mulhouse. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, to be fair, Mulhouse has much more to offer than what I showed you here. Of course, this is always the case with every place I visit, since I can't show you everything. I still feel the need to point out that Mulhouse has a number of great museums you can visit. While I decided to go with the historic one, since it's the one that interests me the most, the other ones are much more spectacular. They are far outside the city center though, in the periphery. Here's the first one. It's an automobile museum. According to its website, it houses the largest collection of cars in the world, roughly around 500 vehicles. So if you're a car enthusiast, you should totally check this one out. Here are some pictures. The second one is quite large as well. According to its leaflet, over 60,000 square meters. However, this one is not about cars, but trains instead. So if you happen to like those, you know where to go. Unlike the car museum, it does not claim to have the largest collection in the world. It only states to be the largest railway museum in Europe. So quite considerable in any case. And now it is finally time to bring this episode to a close. I hope to see you again on the next one, when we will be visiting the French town of Thann. Until then, have a nice day.